Good day, my name is Floreta and my discussion is all about security survey reports. Before I will proceed to my discussion, it is a note that my discussion will be somehow incorporated with my experience with security survey since here in my workplace, our security service provider have been inspected recently, and I have asked our security guard, which is a good friend of mine, of how a security survey is conducted. So let us proceed. What is a security survey? It is an assessment of a company's facility, workforce, and critical assets, containing an evaluation of its vulnerability to potential threats and risks. The survey results in a matrix that reveals the direct impact of these potential threats and risks on your most valuable assets and operations. So, it is an on-site examination and analysis of a facility to determine what assets are present and their value is. Or it is an evaluation of the security measures of the facility integrated to come up to a conclusion how secure the existing security program is, to identify differences or excesses, to determine the protection needed or if the protection should be improved, and to support recommendations to improve overall security. So what does it look like? What does a security survey look like? So as you can see at the background, it is a simple checklist that a security officer will conduct in conducting a security survey report. So this is only a simple form of security survey report, because a security survey report comes in many forms, for it does not follow a particular generic format. Why it does not follow a generic format? Since security survey reports vary from agencies to agency or departments from departments. So conducting a security survey. So this is a instruction or an way of how to explanation of how to conduct a security survey. Usually performed in a traditional manner and can optionally include the team-based risk assessment methodology. A security department or agency will develop their own security self-assessment, security audit, and review process, which would be conducted by their staff, comprised in checklists and guidelines designed to identify particular threats, vulnerabilities, and risks. So, this team-based risk assessment methodology refers to the formulated assessment checklist or system of how the security agency or department will conduct their survey. And to conduct, after formulating this system on how to assess the security, how to assess the service providers' services, they will send forth their staff to conduct their survey, which they called as the inspectors. So here are the methods in conducting a security survey. First is observe the facility functioning at all hours and shifts. So you must keep an eye on the facility while it is functioning to determine what are the usual activities. So you have to stay within the facility to have knowledge of what are the usual activities conducted within the facility when it is functioning. Interview representatives of local law enforcement, emergency response, and other relevant agencies. So, here in my workplace at Torres Street, Bishop's Residence, the security officer from Multi-Shield Agency have conducted interviews from the barangay respondents or from the barangay officials, like such as the tanods. Review relevant materials, and these relevant materials refers to crime statistics, incidents and activity reports, policy and procedures, contracts, plans, specs, police reports, emergency and crisis plan, past security assessments or surveys, and etc. So we have to, or they have to review the crime statistics to identify how often certain crimes are committed within the vicinity of the facility, and what usual crimes do occur in the premises, such would it be robbery, thievery, or trespassing, and what are the policy and procedures of the facility, and the police reports of the area, emergency and crisis plan such as earthquake drills, fire drill, how will the employee respond to these emergencies and crises, and especially the past security assessment. You have to review so that you can identify if the recommendations and what are the findings, if the findings and the recommendations have been taken action. Meet and supervise the area with security guard. So you need to supervise the area with the security guard, since the security guard has been working there and he knows the area very well. Evaluate existing planned, procedural, and physical security countermeasures that could include the following. So you still have to evaluate the existing planned procedural and physical security countermeasures to check if it is effective and well functioning. So first is the policies, plans, and procedures. Employees awareness. So employee awareness refers to the consciousness of the employees of these policies, plans, and procedures. And these plans and procedures, you have to evaluate it if it is effective enough and if it is really followed. The video, CCTV, interior and exterior. So you have to check these closed circuit televisions to check if it is effective, if the lighting near these video cameras are efficient to identify the persons who are passing, and if it is functioning. Signages such as no entry, only authorized personnel are allowed to enter, no vandalism, no loitering, and many others. Lock and key control, who have access to keys and who are allowed to hold the keys. Alarm systems, intrusion, egress, and duress. So intrusions are referring to trespassers. What is the alarm system for when there is trespassing, and what is the alarm system for egress, which is assigned to leave the area or evacuate. And duress is an alarm system referring to there are threats or violence within the facility. Access control, who are the authorized personnel to enter certain locations or areas within the facility. Visitor control and management. This refers to uh, how the visitors are directed when they are entering the facility. Security staff, including guard force operation. So, you need to evaluate it if it is efficient and if they are in uniform. So, dito ang ginawa ay pagpunta, check kung ang guard is on duty and if si guard ay nakasuot ng full uniform and if it is proper. Executive protection. So, this refers to the executives if they are well protected within the facility. Material receiving, shipping, and inventory controls. So, this refers to the materials or mga bagay na natatanggap at nilalabas sa facility. How are they managed or handled? You have to check if they have a specific stock room or where are these materials going to check if there is a contraband within them or if it is possible to puslit contrabands with these materials. Barriers and barrier detection. Background screening. So why do we have to evaluate this background screening? It is to identify if the people working within the facility are sustainable enough, because some may be ex-convicts or they are possible criminals. Background screening. And next is investigative procedures. Contractor and vendor screening and control identification process. Does the facility have an ID system or they prefer physical identification, no? So sa sagdaan na mosulod, no, ang basihan na nila if they are familiar with the face. And threat assessment and management. How does the facility handle threats? Training may refer to how trained are the security personnel of the facility. And next is communications and alert systems, to identify if it is functioning or it is effective. Contraband detection, if they are using metal detectors, or in the airports, X-ray to identify if the passengers are carrying contrabands. Mail and package controls, to identify where these mail and packages are headed to or how are they handled. Also, the purpose to check if a contraband may be inside of them, no, or if the employees are stealing them. You still have to evaluate if it is effective enough or secure enough. Workplace violence policies and programs, what are the actions taken when workplace violence happens. Counter-terrorism planning and response considerations. So when there are possible insurgencies, what is the response? No, you still have to evaluate them. Determining relevant security-related threats, vulnerabilities, and risks. So you have to identify what are the possible risks to the security of the facility, so that you can make recommendations on how to improve them, such as if this particular area have vulnerable assets and it is very dark, then you may suggest or recommend lighting. Benchmarking the security program against comparable local or industrial standards and best practices. So benchmarking means you have to set standards to compare the local and or industrial standards for them to kung baga parang gayahin nila yung standards na pinili mo, so that and those standards will be incorporated in their security measures. Distributing a questionnaire or survey to all selected employees to elicit their concerns, issues, and suggestions. So, this is optional. The reason of this questionnaire or survey to the employees is to identify what is the common issue within the facility, their common issue of concerns, or if they have suggestions about the security. Testing security systems, so to know if they are functioning and effective. Employee awareness and or penetration testing, and still it is optional. Employee awareness refers to the employee's consciousness of the policies and rules of the facility. Researching, writing, and presenting a comprehensive report of findings and recommendations based upon the security assessment. So this is the conclusion of your assessment. You need to make a conclusion of what are your findings and possible recommendations. The overall security and workplace violence prevention and response programs should be synergistic system. Synergistic system means that they must function well with each other without contradiction, whereby these measures, physical and or procedural, will contribute to a reasonable and cost-effective protection of the people, assets, reputation, and value. So, the reason that they should be synergistic system, because there are instances na there are some rules that are contradicting to other rules. For example, this is only an example. If in case there is a fire and the staff and the employees will have to evacuate. However, there is another rule that they must not pass specific exits, which may cause them bring them at high risks, no? And the next is security surveys and assessments. Threats, risks, and vulnerabilities assessments are ideal first step to ensure such a synergistic and strategic program, which should be pursued by follow-up and ongoing process or review, planning, implementation, and reassessments or audits must be executed thereafter. So, why security surveys are considered to be a first step? Because security surveys alone is not efficient enough to assure the safety or the security of the facility. That's why you have to conduct thereafter a follow-up and ongoing process of review to know if they have taken action towards the survey's findings and recommendations. Questions about the security survey. So these are frequently asked questions about the security survey. How do contracted security managers and security officers feel about an outsider coming in to make security recommendations? So, tinanong ko rin ito sa aming security guard. Since he is the service provider here, no? When the inspector came, he said that he should maintain his posture to appear that he is not viewing that action as negative, because usually it appears negative, especially to the service provider, for they view this action that would provide criticisms to his or her operation for the company have hired a hitman. Hitman is referring to the inspector who will conduct a survey. Contracted security officers tend to assume that this action serves a justification purpose to replace their services with low-cost contract service. So, kunyari ako, I am the service provider of a company and they will send someone, an outsider, a hitman, an inspector, to evaluate my services. So, initially, my judgment of this action is that why would they check my services? Are they unsatisfied with my security measures or with my services? So, in conclusion, an outsider coming in to make security recommendations is a produces negative feelings to the service provider. However, number 2 will continue. No? How do negative feelings by existing contracted security providers affect the survey? So, spending few moments with a professional excuse me. Spending few moments with a professional security manager convinces the security service provider that the purpose of the survey is to view their facility and security procedures objectively. So, after spending time with the inspector, the security service provider will be convinced that the purpose of the visit or the evaluation is to evaluate the security procedures and the facility objectively. The ability to tell it like it is without the consideration to the executives. The executives refers to the people who grant promotion or salary increase to the employees. No? Is sometimes something the security service provider envies. So, masuya sila kay masuya sila kay wala sila they do not put their, or rather they give their judgment objectively rather than subjectively without consideration to the politics of the workplace. No? Syempre, if you are the service provider of the company, then you give considerations to the politics, especially to the executives, since they are the big boss. The survey usually shows an upgrading that was previously recommended by security management but rejected. This is because the survey is able to display the need for a device or procedure or project, a return on investment. So this is very sad that these recommendations are previously recommended, however not taken action, and with this security survey from an outsider, the company will give more uh, action towards it, because the survey is able to display the survey is able to display an return on investment, no? And next is, what about a lack of cooperation by suspicious security personnel? So this problem is encountered seldomly. Long-term officers have gained their trust, will often confide their views of problems upon realizing that they are conducting real-world security, not by textbook theory. Textbook theory means that this is by the book evaluation. Security personnel often volunteer information on potential problems. The security personnel and officer have the same objective, which is the improvement of the security and facility. So, lack of cooperation by suspicious security personnel happens only seldom. And thus, contracted security provider usually get a copy of security survey. So this decision relies on the management. However, it is irrational not to have the contracted security provider a copy to study the security survey report. So, why not give the security provider the copy of the survey report for him or her to take action of the recommendations and the findings of the security report, since their aim is to improve the security of the facility. Do propriety or contract officers ever review the security reports? Normally not, in cases where the contract service provider is involved. No, because he is involved, why would he still review it? However, it is a good idea for the management to review the security survey reports. So, it is always good to review them to know what are the findings and the recommendations, and to have good ideas that they may apply to the security survey report. Have there been instances that the service provider didn't interfere well during the survey? So yes, there are some instances that the security service provider is not competent enough. So why do they do this? Bakit hindi sila masyadong tumutulong sa survey? This is usually due to ineffective program of staffing. So, ang mga trabahante or trabahador na nakuha is ineffective. Walang mga pakialam, or the security procedures, or it is an attempt to conceal problems and ineffectivity. So, the reasons for the service provider to not interfere with these surveys is mayroon silang tinatago, o ang staff talaga ay walang pakialam. No? Can a security survey be conducted without the knowledge of contracted security provider and personnel? The answer is no. The objective of this assessment and surveys is to work together for security measures. So, in doing these security surveys, the contracted security provider must always be knowledgeable, for they are the security provider of the facility. So, they have much more access and knowledge about the facility. What is the most common security problems found in surveys of individual facilities? So the common security problems that are found is the lack of accountability, security awareness, inconsistent policies. These deficiencies with which cost nothing to correct. So these are not physical deficiencies. This usually dwells within the personnel. No? Is an employee identification system always necessary for reasonable security? Well then, the answer is always. However, even in the electronic age, the best identification system is personal recognition. So, here in my workplace, we are using QR code scanner. However, in some instances, the visitors don't have their QR with them, and these visitors are well-known visitors. That's why we let them pass, because of the personal recognition. We know them well, and we make considerations for them to enter. In the interest of employee safety is the proper response to a bomb. In the interest of employee safety is the proper response to a bomb threat always evacuation of employee? No? So kung may bomba ba daw, is evacuation of the staff and employee the best way? So the answer is no. Though it may seem logical, however, in many instances this had increased the risk to employees. For every facility, event, and environment has its own characteristic. So it is not always a good idea for the employees to evacuate during bomb threats. No? Because in many instances have said that each facility has its own characteristic, and each event has its own characteristic too. Baka kung ipa-evacuate mo sila, nasa labas pa lang ang bomba, din goodbye silang lahat. In so-called third world countries, do still attempt to solicit input from security personnel? Whenever possible, this is done. It can be quite an undertaking to convince security officers to be open about their concerns, and to convince them that by identifying deficiencies, their input will not be viewed as criticisms of management. So, it is hard to convince the security officers to be honest enough about their concerns, because they may think that their opinions may be viewed as criticisms. Next is there any downside to getting a free security survey from a contracted security provider that is trying to sell their services? Possibly. Because in most cases, this contracted security provider conduct this free so-called security surveys as a sales tool in promotion of their services, with a recommendation to subscribe towards their services. So they conduct these free services for you to avail their services. So parang iniinganyo ka lang nila para kunin mo ang kanilang serbisyo. And that is all my report. I hope that we have learned a lot from this discussion, and thank you for watching and listening, and God bless.